Good afternoon. It is 4:44 live from the Talk Radio studio, and this is Talk TV with me, Rob Rinder, and one of my favourite people we've got back. It's Dr. Roger Gewolb. Last week we spoke to our brilliant personal finance expert about the ever-increasing costs of living, and boy, is it a crisis. And with news today that Number 10 is planning to cut VAT in a bid to ease the rate of inflation, I'm delighted to say we've got him back. Joins me again to talk us through this proposal and give us his tips on how to make it through the horrors of inflation. Dr. Gewolb, you know, I rarely, it's like a date, I rarely have a second one, but you were so good first time round, I had to have you back. Dr. Roger, help us out here. I mean, is this cut in VAT going to do anything in terms of prices?
No. Thank you so much, Rob, and good afternoon. Your very kind words. I mean, I wish I could be as cheerful on this Friday afternoon as you, but this is the same thing again. I mean, 5p off petrol didn't even touch the sides. Mm-hmm. And a survey that we conducted showed that 80% of forecourts didn't even pass it on. Can
you just tell us more about that? Just tell us more about the survey you conducted and what happened.
We did a social media survey on LinkedIn and other platforms, and just said, you know, please vote. A LinkedIn poll sort of thing. Please vote. And 82%, I believe, of people said they could not find a forecourt that had reduced their prices by 5p in their local neighborhood.
Wow.
Now, giving homeowners who are on giving tenants who are on benefits the right to buy their homes when clearly they can't afford the upkeep because they're on ruddy benefits is again another cosmetic sop. It's not going to do anything. When will this government, when will these people learn how to do something that is substantial? This VAT cut, it's 12.5%, Rob. That's big, isn't it?
Right.
No, because if, you know, we can do the maths, guys.
Right.
That's 25 pounds per £1,000. Now, your and my homes, they tell us, are going to cost 2,800 quid to heat and electrify this year, right?
Right.
That's a massive 70 nicker to you, Rob. Yeah. That's how we're going to help you avoid this cost of living crisis. We're going to give you 70 pounds savings.
Wow.
I mean, it's just insane. It goes around and around. And thank you very much, Stephen Barclay, the chief of staff at Number 10, for fighting for this against the Treasury and various think tanks, all of whom don't want it because it's going to increase inflation because demand is so high. How's it going? This is cost push inflation. It doesn't work like that.
Well, you use this word. Just stop for a second. You were talking about cost push inflation. What do you mean by that? I mean, look, to the average punter like me or anybody else, you know, you see the tax coming off and you think, great, the government's doing something. And they're reducing VAT. That's got to be a good thing because it will make the things I'm going to buy cheaper. Now, what you say is that
12.5% too.
But right, big old deal. And you say, no, it doesn't work like that because two things. Firstly, because the forecourts don't pass that on and they're not legally bound to. And in any event, that's not going to do anything because of basic economics to stop prices going up in any event.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you just listen to the debates between the chief of staff and the Treasury and the institute of this and the think tank of that, and you listen to it, I mean, you know, it's like being in a course at London School of Economics. Hello, we're in the middle of a crisis here, guys. Mm-hmm. Somebody needs to actually do something. So 25 pounds per £1,000. Secondly, to knock it off VAT, which is on spending. Hello, people aren't spending. Mm-hmm. This is cost push. This is driven by external factors. This isn't consumer demand where Rob Rinder is eating out in fancy restaurants 4 nights a week and, you know, just can't spend enough because the money is so plentiful. This is the opposite of that. So it just goes on and on. They keep doing nothing. It's all cosmetic, and it's frankly making me crazy.
Well, I can hear that, Dr. Roger. But you know, people like you, for a variety of reasons, I suspect, you know, it's something about the living and working conditions, tend not to go and run governments. And I remember Margaret Thatcher, you know, when she first was driving monetarism through, got a letter from hundreds of, there were about 120 economists saying how insane it all was. And it's easy to cop from the sidelines. But in your case, the reason I like to have you back on is you've got a prescription for us, Dr. Roger. You know, if you were in the Treasury, what should they be doing?
It's easy. You don't have to be a genius. It's simple stuff. I mean, as I've said before on many different programs, suspend the VAT on petrol. Don't cut VAT on general spending because people aren't spending. Deal with essentials. Now, everybody needs to get to work. Everybody needs to go see their family. There is 53% of government fuel duty on petrol and diesel. And on top of that, there's 30% VAT, not just on the petrol, but on the tax as well. We're paying tax on tax. We're actually paying tax on tax on tax. Because if you think about it, the pounds that you use to fill up your car, you paid PAYE or tax on. So we're being taxed 3 times. Suspend the 30%, bring the price of petrol down so at least people can move around, especially in this summer of huge discontent when they can't even take public transport. It's just insane. These people don't live in the real world. I am going to charter a fleet of coaches, Rob, around the country. And I'm going to put all these guys and gals on them, and I'm going to take them to cold beans suppers in people's homes around the country, or even better yet, I'm going to take them to a supper where they're skipping that meal.
Dr. Roger, I'm coming with you. I think it's a really important thing. If you're serious about doing this, over some time, I've been talking with my producer, Tom, about getting out from this privileged bubble that we're in London. Although that being said, there is unbelievable amounts of poverty across the country. 8 million people will go to sleep tonight in unsafe housing, for instance. But too many people, you'd agree with me, make policy without actually touching the face of what it is to live with a decision of whether to eat or heat your home.
You just said it, sir. It is a bubble. And these lovely folks in Westminster, they also live in a bubble. I'm sure when they get out of it, they're as normal as the rest of us. But yes, please come on the bus. I'd love you to be the chap with the microphone at the front.
Now, me and Tom will come around and we'll talk about that. We're going to go on the road.
I'm up for that. I'll very, very, very happily organize it. Look, here's another thing. Why is it, I keep scratching my head, that when we talk about things like climate change, cows fart, let's not eat meat. Okay. Let's not use plastic. Let's not, sure, fine, absolutely. You know, for some reason, everybody's up for that. But how about saving people starving to death or who can't go anywhere, do something? You know, when there's a 10p tax revenue going the other way to the government on a carrier bag, ooh, that passes without discussion with think tanks, sure. Why can't they do something to really help us? That's meaningful and real.
It's difficult to understand, certainly because, as you say, it's such a sort of obvious cut, and it's one that would go directly into the pockets of consumers who need them most. Like consumers, ordinary people that need to get around, get to their places of work. It's essential. You know, whilst I've got you here, I was reading this week that Wales, the government of Wales, are talking about giving people a guaranteed basic income each month. I'm sure you've read about it. What's your view about that? Good idea or not?
Well, it seems to work in places like Kuwait. I believe in Kuwait, everybody gets $250,000 when they're 25 years old.
I mean, easily done when you're in Kuwait and the money's coming from oil and you don't have a democracy under the rule of law. Neither of us would want to live there, Dr. Raj.
No, it's an economic theory that's been around for a long time.
Sure. What's your view of it?
My view is it could work, but it's never been tested other than in an environment such as the Gulf. I'd love to see it tested in a French province or an English county for a while and see what happens. I mean, it might very well work.
You know, it's an interesting thing. One of the things that I think is really surprising to people is that there isn't government legislation which says, look, once we cut a tax, right, you have to pass that on to the consumer. So we were having a knockdown, drag out last week, you and I talking about this when it came to passing on the interest rate rise and keeping it to a minimum for the consumer as well. It seems to me that that is basic legislation, right? So if you have a role of government in the economy, it's to do your best to ensure protection for the consumer, to keep competition as alive as one possibly can, but above all else, not to enable companies who've been the beneficiaries of all of the things that our tax money pays for to gouge ordinary people, right?
I think you're talking about something that rhymes with tanks.
Yeah.
Like banks?
Yeah.
Look, you pushed my button before. You've now just stamped on my big button. This is... if the government wants to do anything to help us, I mean, since you and I last spoke, I have had more reports from the actual people, the actual homeowner, Rob, of mortgages this month being 100% more than the month before. Who the hell is doing something about that? Do you know we've got nobody? What's the largest voting bloc in this country? Men? Women? What is it? Consumers.
Yeah. People who, yeah.
If you Google government ministers, I promise you, or you Google government ministers' responsibilities, you will find leveling up, fisheries, health, social care, fun, sport, culture. You will not find the word consumer anywhere on any web page in that site. We need a minister for consumer affairs, a consumer champion who stands up and says to these poor deluded people who've lived in this cloud in Westminster for so long, hello, get real. Do you understand what this really means?
Well, I'm going to run for office and I'm going to make you a member of the House of Lords, and I think you should run it, frankly. I have to say, Dr. Roger.
If they would have me, I'd be delighted, but somebody needs to do it. The first thing the government should be announcing is not a derisory, ridiculous cut of 70 pounds a year on our home energy bills. They should put a clamp on the banks and say, hey, we went up to 1.25. Andrew Bailey fought for that.
I hear you, right. And that jolly well needs to be limited to what we say rather than gouging the consumer, especially as we bailed you out, banks. As you know, and no doubt we'll speak again about this, the fact that the banks have got the gall to do that in circumstances where they weren't only bailed out, but they're people that made massive profits, didn't get prosecuted, is a whole nother discussion. That's Dr. Roger Gewolb, CEO of Fair Money and personal finance expert. And you're listening to me on Talk TV.